We're now going to shift gears and begin thinking about growth strategies. And I want to start with one of my favorite quotes from best-selling author Jim Collins. He said the following: "In a small business, the most important decision you make are the things that you decide not to do." It's one of my favorite questions to ask of a business owner as they're thinking about growth is, what are you prepared to stop doing? So often when we think about growth, it's the decisions are what are we prepared to start, to begin, to add a new product, to go into a new market, to make a key hire. But I think it's also important as you think about growth is what are you prepared to stop doing? What practices, what procedures are you prepared to eliminate, to stop? I'm reminded Jim Collins in his book Good to Great talks about the company Kimberly-Clark, big paper consumer product company, and they made a very difficult decision early on to close about a dozen manufacturing facilities because they decided in order to accelerate their growth, they had to shift from the manufacturing of these products to the marketing and sales of these products. Very difficult decision. What are you prepared to stop doing? Bo Burlingham, in his book called Small Giants, suggested the following: growth is a strategic decision. And I like that thought that we don't assume growth. We've got to make a decision about growth. Do we want to grow? How fast do we want to grow? How do we want to grow? Just a couple of questions that we need to think about. But growth is a strategic decision. It's not inherent in our business. So several additional questions that I think are important to ask as it relates to growth and growth strategies. First, when is a business not ready for growth? When is your business maybe not prepared for growth? So just imagine for a moment, I've hired you and several of your colleagues to go into a business to help that business owner decide whether his or her business is prepared for growth, ready for growth. We walk in on a Monday morning and we start to do our due diligence. What would we see? What would we hear? What would we take notice of that would tell us that either this business is or isn't ready for growth? And some of the most common answers that I get as well, maybe if we saw a lot of disorganization, chaos, people moving around, not quite sure what they're doing, that would be a sign of a business maybe not ready for growth. We would look at their financials and see a lack of capital, maybe a lack of cash on the balance sheet. That would be an indicator of a business maybe not quite ready for growth. A lack or maybe poor leadership within a company, not enough bench strength would be an indication of a company not quite ready for growth. Maybe not quite having not only the right leadership, but the right people in the right positions might be an indicator of a company not ready for growth. No business plan, no design in place that will help expedite a business's growth. So these would all be signs of a business not quite poised for growth. What would we see in your business today that would, in a similar fashion, would be indicative of your company's not quite ready for growth? Another important question to think about as we think about growth strategies is, what are the benefits of growth? We just assume that every business wants to grow. But why? Why does your business want to or need to grow? And some of the reasons that I hear benefits of growth are, more revenue means more profit, means more cash. Okay, that's a good reason for growth. Second, we also, as a growth company, I think we become more attractive in the market to potential customers, to vendors, to suppliers, to strategic partners. I think we also become more attractive in the labor market, hiring key talent, adding key talent to our business. If we're a growing business, that's a story that makes us more attractive in the labor market. Another reason I think for growth is it gets us closer to our our vision that we talked about earlier is we've created a destination, a vision for our business, and growth allows us to get there faster. Maybe it's an exit strategy. You want to sell your business. Growth gets you closer to that exit strategy. Another interesting question I think is to consider when we think about growth is, what are the risks of growth? What is it that we have to be prepared for as a result of growth? One is growth certainly puts a lot of pressure on our cash because growth consumes cash. As we grow, we're having to add more inventory, add more talent, more people, add more assets on our balance sheet. Growth also puts pressure on the organization's culture, the way that we interact with each other, our personalities, so to speak. Growth certainly puts pressure on that. Growth also puts pressure on our operations. We're having to operate differently as we get larger as a company. Our systems, our policies, our procedures. And there's also a human cost to growth, that our employees are having to take on more responsibilities, having to do more work. That's a hazard of growth as well. How do we measure growth? Well, I think there are a number of different ways that we can measure growth. One would be typically top-line revenue. We look at that in terms of how are we growing or adding revenue, or are we adding profit, adding cash, additional market share, are we getting comparatively more business than our competitors? We can also measure growth in terms of the size of our company, number of employees, office space. So a number of different ways that we measure growth. Here's another interesting thought as it relates to growth. There's a common belief that as a business gets larger, it becomes easier to manage. I hear that quite often from business owners, that this has to get easier, in terms of operating this business as we get larger. The reality is that's a false assumption. That particular assumption is what's referred to as the growth paradox. The business actually gets more, as a business gets larger, it becomes more complicated. It actually becomes more difficult to operate. Not easier, but more difficult to operate. The growth paradox. Next, as we think about growth, we have to think about kind of big picture, what are my options in terms of growing my business? What are the different ways of growing a business? And there are 4 that come to mind. One, we can attempt to fix our business, which will allow us to grow. Fix meaning if outdated systems or procedures that need to be fixed, that need to be improved. That's one way to grow a business is to try to fix what's broken. Another way to grow a business is through innovation, to add new products, to try to innovate the way that we operate, to try to automate, maybe use new technologies so we can innovate our way to growth. Another way to growth is through scaling our business, just doing what we're already doing more efficiently, that allows us to build additional capacity. We can scale our way. And then a 4th way to grow our business is through acquisition, to look to maybe acquire competitive firms that allows us to add more revenue, more customers, maybe more employees, try to acquire our way into growth. Sometimes I've been asked the question, is it possible for a business to grow too fast? And the short answer is yes. And I relate this to, I saw a study a number of years ago from the United Nations. And it said, based on research, that more people die on this planet from indigestion than starvation, from eating too much versus not enough. And I think that's true in business as well, that businesses, some that can actually put themselves at risk faster through growth, too much growth, than not enough growth. So we have to be mindful about how fast we want to grow our business. And I think of the quote, the human body can choke faster than it can starve. I think businesses are the same way. So Hewlett-Packard, the founders of Hewlett-Packard, Bill Hewitt, David Packard, quoted once saying, one piece of advice, they said, one piece of advice to business owners: don't grow too fast. A study that I saw not too long ago suggested over 50% of bankruptcies in this country happen after a year of record sales. So we can actually grow our way into bankruptcy if we're not careful. So how do we determine an appropriate rate of growth? How fast? Is it 5%, 10% in terms of revenue growth? I see it similar to when you get in your car, say in the morning, to drive to the office, to drive to the business. You make a decision either consciously or subconsciously about how fast you're going to drive to get to that destination. And what impacts that decision, how fast to drive your car? Well, it may be how much of a hurry, how much time you've got to get there. Same thing in a business. You may determine that you need to grow your business quicker because you only have so much time to do so. What other factors impact your decision driving your car? Well, the type of car you're driving. Some cars are designed to drive faster than others. Some businesses are designed to go faster than others. What else might impact this decision? Well, the weather as you're driving. If it's a nice sunny day, you may feel comfortable driving faster than if it's foggy or rainy outside, where you're having to be more careful. Same thing true in your business. Some macro economic factors like the competition or the economy may affect how fast you can grow your business. So a number of factors impact that decision in terms of growth. One tool that I like to suggest to my clients to use in making this decision about growth, it's called the Sustainable Growth Rate. Calculating Sustainable Growth Rate, SGR, takes in several factors: your profitability, your net profit margin, your debt versus equity, how you have financed the business, debt versus equity, and then the amount of variable assets on your balance sheet. So sustainable growth rate takes into consideration those three factors. You plug them into a formula, and it gives you a suggested rate of growth for your business, a sustainable rate of growth for your business. That's not the fastest you can grow your business in terms of year-to-year growth. Let's just say you make the calculation and it comes out to 28%. So that would say your sustainable growth rate is 28%. A safe rate of growth for your business, year-to-year revenue growth, would be 28%. I tend to look at that more of a range. So 25 to 30% would be a safe rate of growth for your business. Can you grow faster? Absolutely. Again, it's like driving your car on the interstate. Speed limit is 65. That's considered a safe rate of speed for your car on that interstate. Could you go faster than 65? Sure you can. Most people do. You just do that knowing you're taking on additional risk of getting in an accident, risk of getting a speeding ticket. Sustainable growth rate is the same. You can go faster than what you calculate. Just know that you're doing that by taking on additional risk.